because you would usually not only save single values but possibly as well a bunch of values that you can predict if they exist. So the first thing you want to do, as always, would be in service script service, add in a script. Now, in this script, you might want to save money. So you would first have the player added event, game that player added connect function plr, and we'll just have a folder equals to instance.new folder dot name equals to leader stats folder dot parent equals to plr, and we would just have local money equals to instance.new int value, and money.name equals to money. Now this part you might already have, and we're just gonna parent it into the player. Okay, so this part you would probably already have, and now you would be wondering, well, how do I save this? Now, for saving, of course, we need the data store service. So we're just gonna at the start write local ds for data store equals to game get service data store service get data store money data store. And now we would as well want to save it. So we would, below the player added event, would make a player remove event. So then the players that player removing to next function player. And now comes the interesting part for saving. Now here you want to do all your saving parts. So firstly, you want to make an ID for what you're saving. So for each individual player on which ID we will be saving our save data. So we want to make local ID equals to, and every player has to have a respective unique ID. So the easiest way is just to put in speech marks the name of your currency that you want to save. This would also work for bool and object values, but it only works for single values. So in my case, it's currently money, and then ... and the unique thing that every player always has the same and is unique to every player is the player dot user ID. Now you might be wondering, but how do I save this? This is the simplest part. ds set async ID, and then you just want to save the data, so you'd have to save plr.leaderstats.money.value. Okay, so this might seem very complicated, and I made this video in the purpose of explaining so that anyone can learn it. So you would probably already have this if you want to save a currency. Now the player removing function basically just saves your currency, and basically what it does is if a player gets out of the game, we create an ID for this player. This ID will be the same ID when loading, because that way we know that we're loading the ID with his money value. Now in the DS, we set the async of the ID to the value of their money or to the value of their value that we want to save. Now you might be wondering, but from where does it get the ID if you leave and join, your money is gone again? And now we as well have to load it back in, or else the player will just lose all his data. So just like before, right down here, like here we have to create the same ID. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this over to here. Now we want a second variable for the saved data, which will just represent the data which we will get out of the data store. So it's just local saved data equals to nil currently, because it's nothing, because we didn't load in the data. And now we want to use a p-tall, which I don't really understand, but it's better. And it basically just means so that in case something breaks, it's no big problem. Now here comes something very important. Now we basically just made so the save data variable right here equals to ds get async, because as you can see down here, we set the async to id player.leaderstats.money.value. So basically we just get plr.leaderstats.money.value, and save data is gonna be the value of the money that it was when he left. We just have to input the ID, because as you can see here, we make an ID, we save the money value with the key ID, and here we load unknown data with the key ID, so the game knows we're trying to load plr.leaderstats.money.value. So far so good. Now comes the interesting part. We have to down here write if saved data, this weird squiggly thing, equals to nil, then, so basically if it has any data to load, we just want to load our data, so we just have to do money.value equals to saved data, because we set the money again to save data, which is the loaded value from when we set the async when he left, so he gets the money that he had when he started out. And just in case he doesn't, if you want to have so that the player has some starter cash, we can do else money.value equals to how much ever starter cash you want for them to have. Now if we play, now I probably spelled leader stats wrong, so oops. Well, this shouldn't be the problem. The money value wasn't in the plr.leaderstats. That should not be the case. And to test it in Studio, you just have to save it to Roblox data store test is just what I'm gonna call it, because why not? Okay. So now, we can test it in Studio. We just have to go to game settings, security, HTTP to API services should be about the 4th tab. And now if you just quickly save it and load back into the game, then you can see I have 50 money because I don't have any data to be saved. So now, by the way, don't make this mistake. When I first tried to learn stuff about making my own currency, I would go, whilst I could still control my character, I tried to change my money value, but that doesn't work, because then the value isn't actually changed if you try to change it on a client. So up here beside the stop button, there should be a button called turn client. Just click on that, and then you can see we can fly, but our character is still in the wind. Now, expand the players folder, the ddoelker, or whatever your username is, the leader stats folder, and edit the money value to, let's say, 100. Now, as you can see, we have 100 money. If we stop and play, as you can see, we still have 100 money, just the amount that we left off. Okay, so for the people who want to make a different type of data store, let's say they want to save a bunch of values at the same time, as for instance, if they want to save the backpack of a player, like all the items they have in it, we in server script service want to add in a script. Then we want to somehow define the folder that the player's stuff is in. So we would assume that we first need the player added. Right? So game.players.playerAdded, connect function, plr. Now, you have probably already added in a folder, so I'm not gonna bother you. Your folder might be called backpack. So, and it would be in the player. So this folder is basically what we need to save. Now, you wouldn't have any directly inserted data, which would go into the backpack, So we want to save whatever would be the backpack first. So we first of all need up here the data store. So local ds equals to game get service data store service get data store backpack data store. That's it. And now we want to make it a player removing function. So game.players.playerremoving content function elr. So this basically just always fires if the player goes out of the game. So we need an ID. So local ID equals to. So how this works is, so basically here we have a player, and if a player joins, he has the ID, and the ID carries the data which then is given to the player. So whilst the player plays, he has all his information, but when he wants to go away, but if the player wants to go out of the game, so if he leaves, then he gives all of his data to the ID. So that once again, if he joins again, the ID can carry all the data back to the player. So it is recommended to just, and the ID needs to be unique, so that the player cannot just, so that not everyone gets the same key and all the people have one currency shared, that where everyone earns that and loads it back in it. That would be a ginormous problem. So I'll do backpack dash dot dot player dot user ID, so every player would have his own respective key because it couldn't be the same. Now to save data, we would have to do ds set async ID, but the problem is we do not have any values. Now we want to save a table of values because the table represents all the values in one letter, and here we can now, so we need a table. So local backpack equals to a blank table, just these squiggly brackets. Now we can put the backpack into here, and it would save a blank table currently, which is not ideal. Now we would want to get now we want to get the backpack where all the items would be in form from bool, string, and int values. And I'm just gonna do local folder equals to plr dot backpack, because as you can see we made it so that there's a folder inside of the player called backpack over here, so we would assume that it's there, and if he leaves it should as well be there. So this is the folder, and now we want to put all the things in the folder into the table so that the table can be saved and loaded back in. So we want to make a for loop, for I comma v in pairs folder get children do. So now v would be each item in the backpack, but we can individually do stuff with them, and this is just really easy. We just want to put it into the table, so it's table.insert, and now we want to insert it into the backpack table, so backpack, and now we want to insert basically the name, or better said the value. So I'm just gonna use v.name because that would save. So if someone would have 50 bread, this would mean that each of the breads have to be individually, and they would all, let's say, be bool or string values, because that way that would mean that there would be a billion items, but you'd have in your display that it would just count how many of them there are, and you would just be able to so it loops through the backpack right here to this backpack and adds every single item to the table. It would only add But in tables you can only add string values, and that would mean that, or int values, but you cannot insert two values for one item in the table. But now we can, now that would mean that we would save the whole backpack. Now you but wonder, how would this load back in? Because he may still have all the stuff if he leaves, but if he joins back in, we don't give it back to him. So that is pretty simple actually. We only have to copy this ID because we want to load it back in, and then we want to set a variable called save data. Local saved data equals to nil because we don't have any saved data yet. Now in the p call, we want to, from the data store, so we want to make so the saved data is data store colon get async, because as you can see here we're setting the async, so basically we're getting the backpack table, so save data will be the table of the backpack. By the way, it's not a furniture table. And now we want to check if the player has anything. So if save data weird squiggly sign equals to nil, then, so this is assuming that he does have any data, so we want to loop through the table. So for I comma v in pairs. Now we want to just do save data because save data is the table do. And by the way, no, we don't do get children because save data is already a table, whereas here a folder is a folder, and we need to do get children to convert it into a table. And now we just have to, for each and every single one of the items create that we're loading back in, we have to create a value that is parented into the folder so that we can save it again. So we just do local item equals to instance dot new, and now you can just use a bool or string value or int value. I'm just gonna use a string value because, so I do string instance dot new string value, and item dot name equals to v, because v is basically the individual item we're loading back into the backpack, and because we're saving the name and we're loading the name, so that way you just load back in every individual item. And now we only have to parent the item into the folder, because that way it's loaded back in and can be saved again, because the player already has an item inside of him called backpack, so we just have to call it something like maybe bpack, just so it doesn't assume we're trying to access the regular player backpack. That's as well why it already recommends it to you, so bpack. Oh yeah, the problem is as well that we're not inputting an ID from which it would load the data. And now if we play, we go to the server, players, your username, and in the bpack insert a string value. You don't have to name it, and stop the game and play. Then if we expand the players folder, your username folder, and as we can see in the bpack there should be a string value with exactly the same name. Now the fun part is that with this data store you can store multiple values in one simple function, but it is not that complicated. I mean, you can duplicate the values a few times and reload the game, but the only difference will be that you cannot save individual values for the individual names, for the individual parts. But in any other extent, it's just as good. Okay, that was how to make two different data stores. I'm Striptoplots, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!